Joining me now is writer and filmmaker Caroline Rose Giuliani, the daughter of former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Caroline, welcome. I'm awfully glad to talk with you about this. And I don't have to tell you, we all know your father was America's mayor after 9/11, perhaps the most popular man in the entire country at the time. That has sadly changed. He is now facing a slew of legal and financial trouble related to his association with Donald Trump. He has been disbarred from practicing law in New York, as well as D.C. recently, facing criminal charges now for election subversion in Georgia and Arizona, filed for bankruptcy following a $148 million judgment against him for defaming those two Georgia election workers. I'm not trying to come at you with everything. You know this. But the question is, how much do you blame Donald Trump for your father's troubles?
Everyone needs to be accountable for their own actions. I really believe that. But I think I want to focus the attention of the country on Donald Trump because he is the single biggest threat to our nation right now, to our personal freedoms. And so I think it's really important to look at the fact that people who worked alongside Trump are not supporting him. His own former vice president is not supporting him. People who worked in the Defense Department are saying he's a danger. He's not fit to serve. Republicans who are in his administration are saying, do not elect this man. And that does not benefit those people. That is political suicide. And so we need to listen to those people. They are telling the truth and they're trying to warn us.
And you're right. Look, despite everything, you love your dad. You grieve losing him in your eyes to Donald Trump. But you are voting for Kamala Harris for president. Why is it important for you to make this public? And how hard was it, the public part of making this decision?
Yeah, it was really, really hard because I do love him and I hope he knows that. I want him to know that. But I want to have children, and I've been thinking a lot about what that means in this world. It's really a scary prospect as it is with everything that's happening to the climate and with reproductive rights under assault. And so just when I thought about the future that I want to be able to give my children, it just became very clear that I needed to get this message as far out there as possible. And I knew that sharing my personal story would be effective in doing that. I think it's just so important to remember that this is not just about the next 4 years. This is about the rest of our lives, because the damage that Trump can and will do to our institutions will last beyond after he dies. You know, he will pave the way for future autocrats also to run our country.
I'm curious how often you talk to your father now. Do these matters come up, past these Trump-related themes? One question we hear people ask, is he the same person?
Yeah, we do talk. I mean, I don't think anybody stays the same person for their whole life, right? We're always changing. And I do have open conversations with him. He knows how I feel about all these things. I don't think any of this came as a surprise. I think one thing I do try to tell him is just how afraid I am about our future and about the future of any grandchildren that I may give him.
Caroline, but when you say this to him, though, what does he say to you? What does he say?
I mean, he talks to me the same way that he would talk to a camera, I think. He has his way of presenting these things, and he just sticks with them. And it's hard. It's really hard. And I think a lot of families, like, the reason I get asked about this so much is that it's so relatable to have this chasm in your family over Trump. And I think with Trump in office, those chasms are not going to be able to heal. I think we need to go back to, as much as I don't want to go back to the past in general, one thing about the past I would like to go back to is when politics were divisive, but people could still disagree over them. And I think Kamala Harris has shown that she will allow for that. Look at the Republicans that have come behind her. Look at Liz Cheney campaigning right alongside her, saying we do not agree about almost any policy, but Liz Cheney wants Kamala to be the president too, because she understands what a threat Donald Trump poses to our personal freedoms.
Yeah. Do you have concerns your dad might go to prison?
Of course, that's a fear. It's a really difficult thing to think about. I think the thing I'm focusing on now is the future of our country, and who I want my children to be able to look up to in the office of the presidency. And I think if you even just take the policy out of it, which is very hard to do with things like reproductive freedom and the climate crisis, but if you even take all of that away and you just watch Kamala Harris talk and the optimism and joy that she brings back into politics, and then you watch Trump and you see the hate and the anger that he spews, I want my children to look up to Kamala Harris.
So it's ironic. Your father once had this reputation as a really tough federal prosecutor, a proponent of law and order. Now he's a key ally of someone convicted of 34 felonies. What is it that you think makes Trump so appealing to certain people? How does Trump get people like your dad to bend to his will and become an accomplice to his lies and misdeeds?
Yeah, I think that it is human nature to think that the bad thing isn't going to happen to me. You know, I know it happened to me. I have long COVID, and I never could have imagined that would happen until it did. And I think that that's something that, unfortunately, that we're doing, that America is doing right now. We're thinking, well, or not we, but many people who are considering voting for Donald Trump are forgetting what a danger that he poses, and thinking, well, we can survive it. We survived it the first time, but we barely survived it the first time. And I think we need to remember just what a close call it was. You know, Trump did not participate in the peaceful transfer of power, and he is setting the stage for a second term to be much scarier, because he's going to change the fabric of the institution so that government officials are not capable of being disloyal to him. So I just think it's really important to think back to the chaos that Trump brought to our nation and really feel into that and remember it as we go to the ballot boxes this November.
I've got to hope that your father is very proud of raising a very articulate, intelligent, well-spoken, and brave woman in you. And I also just want to end this on a very positive note. Congratulations on getting engaged. I think that's wonderful news. So we wish you a lifetime of happiness with all that. And Caroline Giuliani will stay in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much.